Hey Axel, got your brake booster finished, tested, and ready to rock and roll. Let's go over a few things. As I had mentioned earlier, your vacuum diaphragm had no lubrication on it whatsoever, and it had the lips had collapsed. You can see how the lip is the same height as the heel right here, so we had no lip. It was not going to produce any vacuum. And as I'd mentioned, the vacuum can had no plating left inside of it, so we were going to have it was not a smooth surface, and it was not a surface. It was a surface that was going to start corroding, and without lube and with this surface, bad surface, this poor diaphragm gave up. Also, you got a broken J-bolt here, and I went ahead and replaced that. I'm not going to have people looking at my boosters and saying, "Hey, Samples gave you a booster with a broken bolt on it." Anyway, so first we're going to test the brake light switch, because when my machine starts up, it's pretty noisy and you can't hear the little squeal on the VOM. So we're going to pressurize. There we go. We've got brake light activation at about 200 psi. It's usually they start around 50 to 100, but this will certainly work. It's not a big deal. Disconnect this, get this turned off, and so we do have a good brake light switch. Now then, all the plating is either CAD as per original, or a black oxide. The new vacuum diaphragm inside, all the hydraulics are brand new. The air filter assembly, poppet in here has been rebuilt. There's two seals on either side of it. One you can see and you think, well, that's okay, but the other one you can't see, and that's the one that gives you the trouble with leaking vacuum. This is a test port. You can use anytime you want, and this test port leads to this gauge right here, and this gauge is going to go to 0 as soon as the booster is fully activated, and you'll see it walking its way down to 0. Now then, no need to use this bleed screw and bleeding the booster. Bleed here first, do a lap around the car, and then bleed this one last, and then that should take care of you. A point of interest for you, this vacuum check valve, it's held in place by a nut inside the can, and it is not a captive nut. It's the way they made them. And so if you unscrew this vacuum check valve, that nut's going to fall inside, and you have to take the booster apart to reinstall the check valve. Also, you got a weep hole right down here. You can see this little teeny weep hole. You may have remembered when you sent your booster, there's a bunch of yellow crunchy stuff around here. Well, that's because this booster had been leaking for quite a while, and this is your first line of defense right here. This tells you that the booster is leaking internally, and the next step is for it to leak into the vacuum chamber. And so this booster, you say it's on a driver car, but they haven't been driving it very much. Anyway, you check if this has fluid coming out of it, then you know you got the beginning of a leak in the booster. You can still use the car, but the next step is for the brake fluid to get sucked into the vacuum chamber. Now then, what we expect, we've got two gauges. They're tied together in terms of vacuum that is produced by my vacuum pump, and this gauge is going to stay steady while this one goes to 0 as the booster is activated. Over here we've got our hydraulic, got our input. Both gauges are tied together. This gauge goes up, maxes out. This gauge goes up and reads final input pressure as supplied by my test machine. Output. Again, both gauges tied together. This gauge goes up, maxes out, and this gauge reads final output pressure. Without vacuum going to the booster is inert. You got vacuum brake fluid in, brake fluid out. So we'll see that by the same pressures in and out. I got 350, 350, 350. Now we're going to hit with vacuum, and we'll see if the booster will show it working. Then while we're making noise and it's under load, we'll check our fittings, check our weep hole, check our fittings. Booster's holding good vacuum. Okay, booster's fully activated. Come over here. And there we go, almost 1200 psi. This booster is a beast. It's about a 3.5, 4 to 1 boost ratio. Maybe it's a 4 to 1. I forget. I think it's 3.7. Anyway, make some serious pressure. Okay, here's everything together. There we go. So you can use this test fitting to check your booster when it's in the car. Now then, while we're under pressure, holding pressure, we're checking our bleed screws, checking our fitting right here, checking our weep hole right there, checking our brake light switch, holding pressure. And it cycles off. Yours, as you remember, was stuck on the output. Holding pressure. Now, not anymore. Alright. Got a good booster for you. Thanks for sending it to me.